Good evening, everybody. We're back. We're back. We heard that
Yes.
before. Hey, captive audience is here. Don Anderson here and Sonny Danforth. Say hello, Sonny.
Hi. And I am not tired of winning. It's
Yeah,
just beginning.
it's become your name, I see.
Yes.
Winning bigly and not tired of winning. I can agree with
Yes.
that. It does feel good to wake up in the morning, turn on the radio, and it's like Ronald Reagan used to say, "It's morning in America again," right? I haven't felt this good since Ron was around. So I tip my hat to Ron because every day with Trump is like a day with Ron.
I'll tell you, it is wonderful. And I look forward to the news to see what he's doing now. Because right now, there's a lot going on. It's
Yeah.
kind of hard to keep up with all of the things that are happening.
Oh, it's awesome. What's great about it is for the first time since I don't know when, we have someone who's willing to just say it like it is, unapologetically, state conservative positions and put your stake in the ground unapologetically. Because the other side has been on offense for 40 years. They never apologize. We're always backpedaling. And we shouldn't be when we're in the right. They've taken advantage of our natural niceness, our natural kindness, and they just rammed it right down our throats. And it's about time we have someone stand up, put their stake in the ground, and say, "That's it. Daddy's home. There'll be no more of that."
Well, as you were just saying that, it made me think back to Trump's first term. People said, "Oh no, it's not presidential. We don't want mean tweets." Well, let me tell you that everybody's it's all changed and turned around. Not all necessarily, but a lot. He I saw on X this morning that he had mean tweeted to the bishop of the church there
Mm,
that just excoriated him. It was awful. And I thought his tweet was quite frankly very appropriate
mm.
because that wasn't very Christian like whatsoever. And
No,
so now from his first administration of 4 years, his first term as president, to now his second term, America's ready for some strength.
and
Be
I got to say,
unapologetic.
and one of the things that I think we'll call it the Rhino Republicans had as a problem with him was that he didn't have the proper form. He didn't speak to them in nice tones. He wasn't very presidential. But I think if you got out in the woods and the hinterlands in the center of the country, they were thrilled with his language. I mean, I for one never apologized for his in your face tweets, his in your face comeback lines. As someone you hit me, I'm hitting you back. And I loved it. And frankly, I think a lot of the country was afraid to say that for a long time. They
Yes.
loved it too. And it's
Yes.
so great. If you're going to insult me and be rude and nasty, guess what? It's coming right back to you. Particularly in the case of this bishop, if you want to call her that, which is a stretch. Everything she's doing is fundamentally wrong. And he didn't even attack that. We're just talking about how wrong she was in terms of her form to be so rude and nasty in that. So it's supposed to be a national prayer. And she chooses to make a political attack. Well, that's fine. She made it political. So if you make it political, guess what? It's coming right back at you. And I'm thrilled
Yeah.
that he called her on it. So no problem with that. Keep doing it.
I'm with you. So before we get too far into our program tonight, we should wish Melania and Trump happy anniversary. It is their 20th anniversary, and America is back on fire. And just bless you.
Thank you.
So happy anniversary, Donald and Melania.
And what a way to celebrate it. I mean, can you believe the timing of that?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And did you see she even did a little Trump dance herself? I was
Oh,
like
she
pretty impressed.
did. You know what?
She had
She
a few moves.
did.
so so I thought in terms of the meat of our discussion, I would lead off with a little bit about his there's a zillion obvious executive orders that he issued, but one of the ones I was most thrilled about was the breakdown on DEI that he took the wood to DEI, and that had to happen. So I'm just going to look at it, look at my notes here a little bit on this. So that memorandum he issues that no later than 5 o'clock today, all DEI offices are closed, the websites are closed, The training schedules are terminated. All the contractors are fired. All DEI staff are placed on paid leave and prepare for staff reductions by the end of the of business on the last day of the month, January 31st. I mean, he put the wood to him, and that is exactly what needed to happen. And just to make sure, and I thought this was clever brilliance, every federal agency is required to list their DEI employees as of November 5th, which is election day.
Yes.
That way, if they tried to slick them into some other job, we've already thought of that. So I love the strategic nature of everything he's doing because, just the way they've weaponized against us all these years, now it's coming right back at you. And I think that's just fantastic.
I 100% agree. And the fact that with the DEI and the moves and making them list everybody that is in those departments, which I absolutely loved, he signed the, I was talking about it when we first got started here. He signed an executive order that rescinded Lyndon B. Johnson's executive order of affirmative action. And that's where all this started.
Mm-hmm. And see, I had no idea that was still in force. I thought that had been removed since then, but apparently it hasn't.
No, this is stopping nearly 60 years of affirmative action. And that has been part of the demise of America, not having merit-based hiring, but by race. And then you add gender, and they want to add all these other so-called genders, where there's only two. So he's absolutely, as he said, bringing us back to common sense. But, we're going to follow the Constitution because affirmative action goes against our Constitution. Our Constitution says everybody is equal.
And not only that, it's immoral. I mean, you're familiar with Thomas Sowell, the Black economist who studied under Milton Friedman. One of the things he likes to discuss is what it does is the liberals destroy the public school systems that Black children go to with their lowering of standards and the destruction of the family. So the schools that used to be public schools in Black neighborhoods that used to be great schools in the 50s, they turned them to toiletry now. I mean, they're absolutely horrible. And then the so-called fix by the same people that destroyed the schools, or rather than fixing the schools so that you can raise the standards so that these kids compete, let's just lower the standard, right? Yeah. So you wind up with people who can't compete because of the educational system's been destroyed by the very administration who put this stuff into place, which is the Johnson administration, which is also the same administration with its so-called war on poverty, which was really a war on Black people by giving people handouts, destroying the family, and making sure that there's no way that because if you don't have a moral component, the educational component doesn't matter. If you don't have the discipline to study in the first place, which you get when you have a mother and father to teach you the rules of human behavior and human conduct, then you're not going to be able to sit in the classroom and get educated either. And so the Johnson administration is responsible for much of the destruction you see in the big cities now. I mean, we went from what I think like in 1960, 15 to 20% illegitimacy rate to now it's like 80, 85%. 85%. Get your arms around that.
Yeah, and you bring such a great point because you cannot continue doing the same thing and expect different results. We are spending our way into destruction, truthfully. We are, and so this executive order is so wide-ranging because it bans all federal contractors and publicly funded universities from practicing race-based discrimination, including DEI. So if you're practicing that, you know what? You're getting federal dollars? No way. And you know what? They're not messing around. They're not messing around with this.
I love how strategic and thoughtful even about this. For example, what is this? I see part of the plan, again, I'm reading again because I can't memorize this stuff. Each agency shall identify up to 9 potential civil compliance investigations of publicly traded corporations, large nonprofit corporations or associations, foundations with assets of $500 million or more, state and local bar and medical associations, institutions of higher education with endowments of over $1 billion. So if you're doing that stuff, you're done from doing business with the federal government, and that is like outstanding. That is outstanding.
I'll tell you, it is outstanding. It's more than what we can truly, I think, comprehend. Is just how far this goes and what level all of this goes. And thank goodness, some very good, brilliant legal minds and have been at work these last 4 years. I can just see the meetings, in my mind of what can we do, how do we go about it, what's our legal standings and of various things, and what do we want to, and what do we want to capture
Yeah,
by doing it.
you have to kill the incentives. I love Lori's comment about the public schools. Got to speak to that for a minute, right? Because we're where we are now because we raised Marxists and communists, and we allowed these people to raise our children this way for the last like 20 years. Then they get to the university, and then they get Marxism on steroids. So until we reverse that system, it doesn't matter what we do now. If we don't fix this, we'll be having the same conversation 30 or 40 years from now. So this whole thing of taking money, particularly away from these universities, I mean, that's got to happen. And I didn't catch anywhere if he's destroyed the Department of Education yet, but that's got to go too. So I'm sure in phase two, those things are going to happen because if we don't radically change the public school, I don't even know if you have to change the public school, at least introduce competitions through a voucher program, but force them to no longer do these illegal and destructive things. And I think that's in process.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's so exciting seeing these times. Now the left is not so excited like us. Like we were doom and gloom when Biden was doing stuff. So they're kind of feeling that. I don't care
Yeah.
because we're going back to following the Constitution, not following a gender or an ideology or the transformation of America. I want the America I grew up with, as far as following law and order and not having so much of all of this DEI. And
And I think what Americans are coming to grips with, at least a big enough percentage are coming to grips with, is that you can't try and understand Marxists. Just understand that they hate you. I mean, communists hate you. They want the
yes,
destruction of the country as that's their founding principle. You look at what they've done over the last, 10, 12 years they've been in power, and there's no other reason. They're either stupid or it's intentional. There's no other way it can be. To open your borders wide open, you can't tell me that smart people thought that was a good idea if it was in the best interest of the country. There's no way, nowhere on earth where that's ever given you a good result. So clearly that's intentional. We watched Biden sit there and watch people's lives being lost and their personal stories. We all know the Lake and Riley story. We all know lots of stories like that. And
yes.
they didn't care, just didn't care. They left it wide open. And you see how easy it is to fix? They've already stopped coming across the border. The man's been in office 2 days.
They started self-deporting before he was even inaugurated.
Yeah. And then these lame arguments liberals will give, like what was the one? A wall doesn't work. They work pretty good for jails. I mean, walls have worked
Walls work.
everywhere.
Why do you think China built one? I kind of wish ours was like China's.
I mean, East Germany had one for 40 years.
Yes.
Everybody saw the celebration when they tore that down.
Yes.
Yes, hell yes, it worked. A couple hundred people escaped over a 40-year period, but they work.
They do. I want to read a couple of things. So this, I'm quoting from PJ Media. Stephen Green wrote this, posted this story today about Trump nuking LBJ's affirmative action order, which I posted in the comments. And so he quotes Christopher Rufo, the Manhattan Institute, Christopher Rufo, and he explained how wide ranging this executive order is. And at the bottom of this, he says, whatever broad strategy Trump may or may not be employing in his first days back in office, Rufo reminded readers on the anniversary of Martin Luther King Jr.'s birth that the ideological capture of the 1965 Civil Rights Act by the radical left is neither fixed nor inevitable. Rather than argue for its abolition, Americans concerned about the excesses of the DEI bureaucracy should appeal to higher principles and demand that our civil rights laws conform to the standard of color-blind equality. The answer to left wing racialism is not right wing racialism, it is the equal treatment of individuals under the law. That's what I want to see.
Yeah, and it's a return to King's principle of that we be judged by the content of their color of their character, not the color of the skin. And
That's
that is
exactly right.
precisely what the left is against. They want you to be in groups, competing groups, so that way they can divide and conquer. And that's what we've seen. Teaching black people to hate white people, and teaching white people to hate themselves. That's essentially the project that they put in place over the last 10 years. And it's just destructive no matter how you slice it. I mean, think of it this way. If you just break it down to its brass tacks. Let's say you're an accomplished black professional and you've got X degrees from XYZ. You always got to wonder what other people are they thinking you got there because of your skin color. And if you're white, you're thinking, you're competing for the same. Well, with that person here because of their skin color, that's what you got to deal with. Um, just on a daily basis, that's life, and that's because of the things that they put into place. Wouldn't it be a much better place if no one had those doubts? For example, in the sports world, nobody seems to be worried about those kinds of things in the sports world. And the reason why is you're on that team because you're the best wide receiver, you're the best defensive back, you're the best middle linebacker, whatever it is. You earned that, and nobody's asking any questions about that. Race be damned. Nobody is.
Absolutely. It's on merit. When you're the best, you're on the team.
Yeah,
They all compete to be on the first string, right?
And nobody's counting why there's so many Hispanics in baseball.
No,
Nobody's counting why there's so many blacks in basketball. Nobody's counting any of that stuff. Nobody's
no.
counting why there's so many 300-pounders in football. That's discriminatory too.
Refrigerator Perrys,
Right,
they want those guys.
right. Nobody's whining about the race of people who are playing tennis.
No,
They're there because they were the
they've
best.
earned the position.
They earned a
They've
position.
earned the position just on their own performance and on their merit. And so that is a huge thing. That executive order alone, and yet he's rolling back so many.
And the evidence of what happens when you have that kind of a system. I'm sorry to bring back the LA thing because it's so fresh and it's so spot on.
Yeah,
But you look at what happened in LA. They embrace DEI to the max in every shape, way, and form. And you ask yourself, what percentage of the population is lesbian? You know, it's some tiny fraction. Or more to the
right,
point, what percentage is black lesbian? And yet you look at the LA Fire Department and you got multiple numbers of those people in those positions who told you the reason that they were in those positions was to promote people who look like themselves. One of them even went so far as to say, I want somebody to come to a fire who to save me, who looks like me. Now, I don't know about you, but if my house is on fire, I don't give a damn who drags me out. As long as you're big and strong enough to do it, I don't care. And I think
right.
99% of the population would say the same thing.
Yeah,
But that's how insane these people are. And you look at the result they got in LA from those policies. When you start promoting people based on something other than performance, you wind up with the entire city burnt to a crisp. And that's precisely what happened there.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely,
all virtue
absolutely.
signaling.
So, so without affirmative action, without DEI, then it's a level playing field. And if you can, and in the setting that bar, whatever the qualifications are, um, it's a level playing field. You know what you have to do to succeed, to get on that team or get that job, whatever it is. And
And the thing is, and this is what leftists never seem to get, you have to be comfortable with whatever that result is. You're not going to get equal quantities of people in every single thing because human beings have not only do they have different talents and strengths, but they also have different interests. For example, you're not going to wind up with, we're going to wind up with like a ton of black sprinters, to use that example, right? You're going to wind up with a ton of Indian engineers, right? People gravitate towards, we look at the music world. Yeah, you had musicians across the swath, but generally speaking, you're going to have more blacks doing jazz because of the creative side that blacks bring to the table, and you're going to have
Yeah.
more whites doing like orchestra, formal music because that's the mindset. And you're going to see people crossing back and forth, and that's a beautiful thing. One of the reasons why the American music scene is so incredible is because we this mix of everybody doing everything and listening. Oh, I want to try that. I mean, and we see that in our rock groups, in our R&B groups, in our jazz groups. It's like an
Mhm.
incredible thing, and the mix gives us the best music in the world. And the same thing will apply to all the other professions if we stop doing this insanity.
Absolutely. And speaking of stopping doing the insanity, he fired the commander of the Coast Guard
I didn't catch that.
because she was promoting so much DEI. That's what she was concentrated on. And also because of not taking care of the borders of our nation. And so, therefore, today the Coast Guard came roaring back, you know,
So
doing
what?
its job. And that's what we have to do.
And I tell you, here's the other thing you're going to see. These are things you couldn't say, or you could say them with risk only like a few months ago. But you're going to see military recruitment go through the roof because I tell you what, there's a ton of young men, and I know some of them personally who are not going in under the Biden administration. I'm not going to report some cross-dressing general or some crazed
Right?
left-wing woman. They're not going to do that. Warriors want to go be around other warriors where the mission is to be prepared to battle. That's the mission of the military. Period. Is not to virtue signal. Is not to make sure we have this percentage of that number and that percentage of this number. Is to make sure that you are prepared to win a battle and that person who winds up in the trench next to you is capable of picking your butt up and carrying you off the battlefield if necessary.
Yeah.
That's what this is about at the end of the day. And if you're not doing that, you're not only you're putting the whole nation at risk, but you're not going to get the warrior class that you need to go do that because there's a certain kind of person who goes to the military, and it's a next level kind of person who goes, I want to go to special forces. I just said in an interview, my son just went and we talked to the Air Force just last week, and I was in the Air Force, but we went, so we're talking to the military just to see what it's been 40 years, right? But and he asked that question, about would you like to do these kinds of things? And I thought to myself, for me, no. No, but I know people who do or who did.
Right.
I remember being in officer school, and there were guys who were fighter pilots. Now I thought about that, but that's different, and those guys are different, and that's okay. They have to be different.
Yes.
Anybody crazy enough to go Mach 3 with somebody shooting from the ground at them is a different animal. Uh,
You know,
that's
you're absolutely right. There are those that are the thrill seekers that have that in them, the need for speed, and others that aren't. And this is where, the socialist says, well, we got to raise everybody up. We're all got to start at the same place. We're not. Nowhere. It goes against nature. Nature is the survival of the fittest. And in our country, we don't have a caste system. So you can be whoever you aspire to be. Look at our new vice president, his beginnings of where he came from and where he is today.
that is because
That
it's
is the
America.
United States of America. That is the journey of America. And we're not all the same. And
That is
thank
the
God we're not.
Yep, American Story is exactly what he looks like. To come from the absolute worst, abject, family destroyed poverty and still make it to the position he's in now. I mean, that is phenomenal. We got to celebrate that. But the other thing, and we need to get back to this too, is we have, as a society, have come too much in the direction of measuring material wealth as success. And we can't do that. That pursuit of happiness, the original meaning of that in the Declaration of Independence was in the 17th century, that meant pursuit of virtue. In other words, trying to be the best human being you can be. We need to go back to celebrating that. So rather than looking at someone for all the wealth or the position they have, what is the caliber of the character of that person? Because that's what matters most. And we were like that as a country back in the 50s and 60s, 40s, and before that. We weren't producing leaders like Biden. or these other people who are basically traitors to their country, they would never have tolerated that. Um, because because we got away from, well, that basic Judeo-Christian concept of pursuit of virtue.
Yeah.
We need to get to that. And then
Hundred percent.
as a result of that, we wind up having more wealth. That's the great paradox.
100%. Amen. I agree with Lori. Amen. That is it. It is about the character, and that will bring a lot of success, and a lot of success in our country. There's so many like these stars, so-called stars, entertainers.
Mhm.
Remember, they're all entertainers.
Yeah.
And saying that you should believe this or vote for this or that, and
Mhm.
yet many are morally bankrupt,
Yeah.
emotionally bankrupt. And that's, to me, and looking at them, I go, I don't see anybody there that is an idol whatsoever to look
Yeah.
up to.
When you look at
Mm-mm.
People magazine on the news rack at the grocery store, and you look, I wouldn't want anything like their money's great, but I wouldn't want to be their lives are destroyed,
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
because they've gotten away from the moral code. There's another speaker. His name is Charles Murray, and he's a great speaker, a great writer, like a sociologist. And one of the things he speaks to is what life was like in the 40s and 50s. And if you took, for example, top executives, prior to 1960, they all went to Joe Blow middle of the road college, and a lot of them didn't even have college degrees, and they could afford to buy a 30, 40, 50,000 foot mansion and drive a Mercedes, but none of them did because they thought that was tacky and
yeah.
not a good. They felt that would set them apart from everyone else. So they might drive a Buick at most. They weren't going out and buying a Mercedes or a Cadillac or anything like that. And they live in the neighborhood that was a nice neighborhood, but it wasn't like what you see these people doing now in the Silicon Valley, where they buy a 50,000 foot mansion with a gate around it. They were going to church with everybody else. They were a part of the community, and they view and that changed the way they behaved as well, because they realized that yes, their job was to make a buck, but the job was also, I keep a whole lot of people employed. And they took that as a serious responsibility. You look at what we have now, and this goes back to the morality part of this, because these people are now immoral. They think of everybody as deplorables, and that came out virtually. She used those exact words, and she meant those. They view people of different means as deplorables. They go out and buy a 50, 60,000 foot mansion and put it out away somewhere else. They only live next to each other. And we all know the names of those towns, right? Every city's got them. And they set themselves apart from everyone else. They think they're better than. And then you wind up with stuff like you see in LA. And this, the great thing about LA is this: they finally got victimized by their own policies.
Yeah, they did. Yes, they did.
Yeah,
Now
think
we'll
of
see what they make of it. So let's see if they turn it around. You
well,
know,
I don't think they're
we'll see.
capable. Here's my so the clown governor they had was talking about doing a Marshall Plan. I'm not sure if you heard that. That's
Yes.
his latest thing, tossing around the language of the Marshall
Yeah.
Plan. Yeah, I hate to say anything remotely like I agree with him, but hear me out here. I was just talking to this with my son. Me and my son have these discussions all the time. So I think the only way this gets fixed in a short period of time is you do something like what happened. Remember, I think it was in 80, 89, 90, when the freeways collapsed. There was a freeway collapse in LA. It was like
Yeah.
a 7.2 earthquake, I
I
think it
do
was.
remember.
Right. So they put out a contract, and the contract basically said the faster you fix this, the more money you make. And that freeway was fixed in, like, I think it was like 9 months. It was unbelievable how fast it was. And the
Hmm.
contractor made a lot of money, but guess what? It was fixed. To go back to the whole Marshall Plan approach, I'd almost like, because I know Americans are capable of this. We've done it before. We say, you know what, roll up our sleeves. We're going to fix this, and we're going to fix it fast. And we're going to get the military. We're going to get whatever we need to do to fix this. But there's going to be some serious strings attached, right? All of these stupid rules and laws and leftist regulations and all that, that stuff is like gone, right? We'll put it back just like it was, but here's the way business is going to be done in California from now on. And I think you put that to the California voters. You can keep doing what you've been doing, or we come in and fix this for you. But the price is going to be, you ain't doing no more DEI. You're not doing no more of these crazy leftist environmental regulations. That stuff is out. Or you can sit here and suffer with Gavin. I would love to see something like that. Um,
Well, that's going to be interesting to see. You know, there was so much of their tax base wiped out. A property that was 15 million is now maybe one, just the lot,
Well,
the property.
California
And
cannot fix this unless the other 49 states jump in.
yeah,
In the near term anyway. Not
yeah,
going to happen.
that's going to be interesting.
Yeah. So here's a classic example. And I can't remember. Maybe some of you know this story out there in the audience, but I think it was right after the Battle of Midway. Um, it might have been the USS Enterprise, but it was one of our, and we only had like three for a while. The Japanese had cleaned our clocks, right? So we only had like two or three uh, aircraft carriers afloat. And one of them just got nuked and it limped back to Hawaii in really bad shape. And uh, and so the Admiral Nimitz asked, "Well, how long does it take to fix this?" Because the next battle that was being planned, they had to be
Hmm.
back out there in like a week, and they told him like minimum 90 days. He said, "You got 72 hours," and they fixed it.
Right.
Such is American ingenuity. They worked that thing 24 hours a day around the clock. When it was going on its way back to the battle, they had guys on there fixing it on the way back to battle. So American ingenuity is an amazing thing. We could fix LA. We could do it, but we can't do it and let them basically cause it to happen again. They got
No,
to change. They got to
no,
change
there
their
has
ways.
to be big strings attached for
Yep.
the federal government coming in. And Donald Trump is a developer, he's a builder. He knows how to solve this.
Yeah, and I would love. We'll see this plays out, but that there's your Marshall Plan. Yeah, we can
Yeah.
fix it for
Yeah.
you, right? But you can't keep doing what you're doing.
So, how do you like what's happening at the border already?
Love it. Love it.
I love it. I love it.
gotta get you. Gotta get my village people groove on.
You know, Tom Homan, his ICE has already arrested over 300 violent, illegal aliens. And they are going back to calling them illegal aliens because that's what they are. And I heard he said, you know, people going, well, they haven't broken any laws. Well, yes. The first law is when you come in this country illegally.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
That's all you have to do.
Mhm.
And you're done. You're gone. So I'm loving what he's doing.
Yeah. And it's awesome because you start not enforcing one law, then people start getting like, well, maybe they want to enforce the other laws. It's infectious. You have to enforce the law.
Yes, you
Um,
do.
Otherwise, repeal the thing if you're not going to enforce anything. So I think it's great. You came in illegally, you have to go back. It's pretty simple. Now, obviously, we've got to start with the criminals first. There's a triage element to this. But if you're caught up in the net and let's say you're a non-criminal illegal, you're still illegal, you still have to go back.
Yes, and so here's an article in PJ Media. The new southern border encounters numbers under Trump are in. Wow. So in in 2 days, in 2 days, the last 24 hours, total apprehensions on the southern border was 766.
Wow.
Compare that to the 10 to 12,000 Biden had at one time.
It's going to be interesting to see what historians say about this guy in 20 or
Yeah,
30 years. I
yeah.
mean, he's got to be in the running for the worst president. There's got to be.
I think it's treasonous what he did, and I do not believe that that you can pardon away treason. But does somebody have the will to go after him for that? That I don't know. But I
Well,
believe it's treasonous what he did in opening up the border uh, the way it was and flooding us. And Vice President Harris going, I'm not the border czar. I was never in charge of the border. Oh, yes, we all know. They think they can just speak the lies into existence. But
yeah.
for many of us, they
And,
can't.
and I just don't know. I didn't know you could preemptively pardon someone. You can pardon someone for a future crime. I don't. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not. I didn't go to law school, right? But I just don't see how that works. So maybe someone will explain that eventually. But to preemptively pardon his whole family and everybody else seems
Well,
crazy to me.
Tom Fenton of Judicial Watch is saying we need to go in after that because he feels that that is against the law, a preemptive pardon, a big blanket pardon, for crimes that you may have, let's see, thoughts you may have had or crimes you may have committed. No way. It's
It,
supposed to, so we're going to have to wait and see what the appetite is and of the legal scholars and just how far to go about that. But frankly, I believe and I hope that they do, because I think a preemptive pardon, although legal scholars, and Trump said this, he says I was advised to preemptive you know pardon my family, myself.
not
He
that.
says, what for? I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know,
Right. Yeah.
but I
It's
think it's too broad when you now are pardoning how many hundreds he did of the whole J6 committee, yet they destroyed all of everything that their so-called evidence.
Well, here's the thing. They started the lawfare thing. We need to bring it right back to them. We would never be in this mess if they hadn't done that. So you know what? Reverse lawfare. I think we ought to file as many lawsuits as we possibly can. Keep them busy. And that's it's coming back at you. I don't that in and of itself is deterrence. In fact, I've seen where what was it? So we've had CNN, I think, get sued a couple of these liberal places for making false statements, which is a great thing. Those
Yeah,
things were never happening before, and I understand that someone's calling. They said, what's his name? Uh, Musk did the Nazi salute.
oh
I'm sure
yeah,
you caught that, right? Clearly it wasn't, but they're saying he was doing the Nazi salute. One ought to be very careful about making false accusations against billionaires. They kind of have
yes,
enough money to pursue a lawsuit, and
they do.
I
And
think
I
he does.
hope he does.
I
I
hope he
hope he
does.
does.
Yeah, because
And Trump had said we have to stop this blatant lying. Let's get back to the facts. The news should just report what the news is,
yeah,
not their opinion. And if you are misreporting in your opinion, frankly, you ought to get a lawsuit.
and they're
Back to the
already
border
behaving.
just a minute. The Justice Department tells prosecutors to investigate local efforts to obstruct immigration enforcement. And that goes to the sanctuary cities, the sanctuary state. And I frankly hope they come to Oregon and raise hell,
I would love
because
to
we're
see
a
it.
sanctuary state. I
Mhm.
think it's going to get challenged.
Yeah, I do believe it is, and I think a personal lawsuit is the way to do it. You go after the officials that are doing this stuff. You want that? Okay. You willing to personally go to jail? Let's see what your appetite is for that.
Yeah.
My guess is not their appetite's not going to be that high. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I think too, because some of the city's officials are realizing, oh, I can't go against federal law because it's our federal government's job is to secure the borders, and they have the right. Marshals can go anywhere.
mhm.
They can go anywhere. Um, and and thankfully some states have said, oh yeah, here I heard or read something, a governor or a mayor of a city, I think, had said, oh yeah, we've got 500 in this jail over here. Come and get them, please come
Mhm.
and get them, you know and that's what needs to happen. Let's help them get
Well,
these people gone.
yeah, and I tell you, how about the birthright citizenship thing? This is
Oh
the other one
yes.
that's going to be a big. So
Wow.
they claim that it's unconstitutional, right? And even though that was never the intent of that, that amendment, which I think was the 14th, I can't remember. But here's
Yes.
the thing: if they want, and they're already bringing lawsuits, I think it's great, and I think that I think the conservatives will win. But even if we didn't, you know what? Okay, let's go have a constitution. Let's go have a constitutional convention and let's amend the constitution. Uh, if that's what's required to fix that, then we need to do that. And we haven't had an amendment to the Constitution, I think, since what, 72 when we gave 18-year-olds the right to vote. I think that was the last one. I think enough people would say, yeah, heck yeah. You
Yeah,
know,
I think so too. And it is. I want to look at something here on because Tom Fenton was talking about this on. He thinks that the Supreme Court will ultimately uphold the birthright citizenship executive order. The 14th Amendment has always excluded from birthright citizenship persons who were um, illegal. If you are not lawfully in this country,
mhm,
then you don't have the right to be here. And we have birthrights tourism happening. Here in Oregon, you can fly from anywhere in the world into this country and
mhm.
have a baby, and Oregonians are gonna pay for it. And now it's that kid is a citizen.
Yeah, I remember being in California, and I used to call on hospitals, and they'd be packed with pregnant women from across the border, come here just long enough to have a baby, right? Um,
Right.
and California taxpayers were paying through the nose for that. Um,
And
and
so today, my mom and I had to go to the Department of Motor Vehicles in our town.
I'm sorry.
You know what? This week it was the office is only open one day a week. It's only open Mondays and Tuesdays. Well, Monday was a holiday, so I guess we went yesterday. And so wasn't today. Boy, the days are flying. Anyway, we went yesterday.
Mhm,
There were so many Hispanics in there that do not speak English getting driver's licenses.
mhm.
And I would bet 90% of them are not lawful citizens in this country. I would bet.
Yeah.
They said, "Well, I need to see an ID." One guy, I speak some Spanish. I'm not fluent. I used to be pretty fairly fluent. I'll say
Mhm,
fairly fluent
mhm,
when I was spending a lot of time in Central and South America. And so the gal is telling him, "I've got to take your picture. Sit down." She points and he looks and he moves closer to the camera. And finally, I tell him to sit down. Siéntate. Oh, okay. And he sat right down. So it was, and so my mom and I, of course, were talking. How
mhm.
many of these do you think are legal? I said,
Yeah.
no,
Mhm. And
maybe
what? Yeah.
10%, maybe.
What?
Is there were others in there that were speaking English. And
Mhm,
I'm not going to discriminate against somebody in our country who doesn't speak English. I have somebody that I know very, very well that is a lawful American citizen,
mhm,
and that person's English is pretty poor. So they speak Spanish most of the time, because that's the first language. But
mhm.
some people pick up languages easy. I'm one that does, and other people don't. We were watching a program the other night. It was an English accent. I had to translate what they're saying to my mom. She was like, didn't matter how loud the television was. Anyway, bless her heart. Some people don't have an ear for some
Right.
accents, and
Yeah.
others do. But it was sad to see at our DMV.
Well, and here's the thing: it's not. These are the sorts of things that the left loves to conflate to racism, and you and your mom are racist for even having this conversation. But the reality is this: no country in the world can survive with multiple languages being spoken, and even if there's a couple, then it won't. It'll be less efficient. Many of us have forgotten the whole thing Canada went through 30 or 40 years ago when the French Canadian part damn near went to war with the rest of it. Um, it you know, it just is too big a headache. And when you flood the country with a ton of people who don't speak the language, I think the Ottoman Empire is a classic example of that. In World War One, they had something like 15 different languages being spoken. It's no wonder that the military got wiped out in World War One because the officers couldn't speak 15 different languages. Can you imagine trying to run a war like that?
Yeah.
Now imagine the rest of your economy. Everything is less efficient when people can't even understand what the other. It's a tower of Babel. It's common sense. Now, a certain percentage of that you can take because you can gradually integrate them into society. The next generation learns the language, that sort of thing.
Yes.
But there's some number where there's beyond which is just too many. And what Biden has done to us is put us in a position where we have too many.
Absolutely. He definitely has. And so before we go tonight, I also want to touch on the DC Gulag still holding January 6 prisoners hostage. And despite Trump's pardons, this is so egregious. Now, I realize from the reading that I saw, especially on X, that some uh, prisons, they released them all, however
Mhm.
many they had. But in DC, they said no. They released two people the night of the inauguration. That's what I've read. That they've read, they released two. They had 20 still in there, and they said we're going to release them at 6:30, 8:30 in the morning. Well, at 10:30 in the morning, the story that I just posted here, they had not been released. This is an absolute. And in fact, on the night of the inauguration, Elon Musk was talking about it. Charlie Kirk was talking about it. You know, saying posts. If you're in fact, here's one from Charlie Kirk. If you are a family member of a J6 hostage, go to the prison and show a copy of this executive order. They have to release the prisoner. The pardon power is absolute, total, and immediate. Don't let them delay. You know, we demand immediate release. And the Metropolitan Police officer laughed at this fella, Trisha Hope. When I told her the U.S. Marshals were called, she said, I don't care. They were openly defying the pardon of Donald Trump.
Well, the true Marxists are just like our foreign adversaries. The only thing they respond to is force. Words aren't going to cut it. Negotiations don't cut it. They got to know that you have a gun, number one, and number two, that you're going to use it. Now they know we have a gun, but Trump hasn't used it yet. So some of them have to get arrested, personally arrested, and then they'll get the message. And I suspect that that's going to happen in certain parts of the country because some of these people are true believers, no question about it.
Yeah, so it's I frankly would like to just see Trump order the marshals in.
Mhm.
And but you know, he fired today um the Biden's Bureau of the Prisons. And it could be because of those actions happening. No, we're not going to. Not all prisons,
Mhm.
federal prisons, were
Mhm.
like that.
Mhm.
Um, but the DC Gulag was, and that is just inappropriate. And
Yeah.
I had read a family member of Jake Lang, likely his fiance, had said on Monday evening that he was assaulted by prison guards, handcuffed, and thrown back in his cell while in the process of being released. He has been in jail for 4 years without a trial in inhumane conditions, much of it in solitary confinement. I do know he is out now, um, but this is just wrong.
Yeah. I think
We don't treat people like this in America.
the thing we have to always remember is Stalin didn't do it alone. Lenin didn't do it alone. Pol Pot didn't do it alone. Ceausescu didn't do it alone. In fact, many of those cases, they never personally hurt anyone with their bare hands or shot anyone. It was their minions that did it. So those evil people are among us. Those Marxist communists are among us, and they'll do that stuff because they're true evil. And I think one of the difficulties in dealing with people in a Christian nation is we forget evil exists because people are so kind and nice here. You know, all you see in the news is the worst among us. But generally speaking, you can go to 95% of the neighborhoods and walk the streets at night and not have a worry. We never hear about that, but that's the fact. Even in Portland, you can walk most of the streets
Yeah.
and it's fine because we're so used to people being nice. But there's a percentage of the population, and they always gravitate towards positions where they can do their dirty deed. Is the same reason why these child rapists wind up working in places where they have access to kids, like public schools. Um,
Yeah,
that's they gravitate to those places.
they
Um,
do. They
and
do. You're absolutely right. You are absolutely right. You know, I've seen many calls, even from some Congress members, that have said, let's revoke Trump's, or not Trump's, but DC's home rule, and let's tear it back to Congress. And frankly, federal oversight. And I think that should happen. You know
yeah,
what? You can't govern yourself. You're allowing the city to be unsafe. You know, when you just openly, blatantly allow Antifa to attack people, it's so the city has been destroyed. We should take it back. That is our state capital.
mhm. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah,
You should not be able to afraid to walk the streets of the state capitol. You get
no.
off the mall a couple of miles, and you better be armed
I
in
said
DC.
state capital. It's our national capital.
National capital, right,
Sorry,
right. Because
national capital,
you
not
get off
state capital.
you get off the
You know,
National Mall, you better be Bruce Lee.
right? Right? We're a
Clint
nation of
Eastwood.
laws and law and order, and we want them followed. And we should not be treating people like this at all. And I read what Lori says. One came out on a gurney. I saw a video of that.
Mhm.
And you know, how sad is that?
And here's
They're
the other side of that. When you don't enforce the law, you're hurting the criminal too, because you're enabling them to keep doing things that are destructive to themselves. Now, that's one of the things that that we don't speak to. But it's like having a
yeah,
kid that you decide you're never going to spank, and they're going to keep doing all this bad stuff because you don't want to hurt their feelings and tell them that they're wrong. Well, you keep doing that. By the time they're 18, they graduate from stealing a yo-yo to stealing a car, and then they wind up in prison, and then other bad things happen to them, and that's kind of where they stay for life, all because you didn't have the nads to discipline them back when they were stealing a yo-yo. And that's what we do when we don't enforce these shoplifting laws, for example.
yes.
We're making the problem worse for the criminal, um, and that's not good. That's not a Christian thing to do either. We don't enable people to stay in the slum. In this case, the moral slum, which keeps them poor and in prison.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to go back to immigrants just a minute. Trump rescinded the COVID vaccine mandate for illegal immigrants. I don't know if I mentioned that. I
Uh,
know I did when we were talking earlier, but
right. That's great, though.
well, it is. And it is good
Mhm.
because, frankly, you shouldn't have to get that. You shouldn't,
No,
nobody should be forced to get that.
yeah. I mean, you could be offered that. And how about providing us with some evidence when you're offering it too, which they
Right,
say you never do.
right, exactly.
Uh,
Um, Let's see. That's about all. Let's see. I don't know. I love that we are withdrawn from the Paris Accords. I love that
yes.
we're withdrawn from the World Health Organization, and they're like having a hissy fit over it. I love it. In fact, today I saw a little bleeb. You know, the World Economic Forum is going on
Mhm,
in Davos.
mhm.
The who's who are not there. They are not there. The who's who are in DC. And Trump, tomorrow morning, Trump is going to speak at the World Economic Forum remotely. That will be
Oh,
interesting to hear. That
I'm
one will
looking
be
forward to
interesting to
that.
hear. Yeah,
I'm looking
yeah,
for I'm sure that's gonna be an excoriation.
I think so too. And you know what? And without us, they don't have anything. And
No.
these are it's just like World Health
Mhm.
Organization. These are unelected bureaucrats deciding what's best for the world. And by taking us out of that, we're giving America back its sovereignty. Well, and it should never be given away.
That's
We are a
100%.
sovereign nation.
And all these other countries should be doing the same thing. And in fact, you look at most of the Western world, the citizens are against this. You look at
Yes,
what's happened in Italy. Gosh, what's going on in France right now? What's going on in Holland, uh, uh, Romania? All of these countries. The citizens are against what their leaders have been doing, and a lot of them have flipped leaders. So now we have a lot of conservative leaders, and it's just great.
it
Um,
is great.
you look at what's happened in Italy, Argentina, for example, Poland. It's just Czechoslovakia. Is it Czechoslovakia? It's one of those. They keep changing country names, but that's happening. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this before we go to. Um, it's just appalling what's happened in Britain. So what's happened in Britain? Remember that case
Oh,
of
yes.
the rape gangs? So the
Yes.
British Parliament, so Labour Party, that's their equivalent of the Democrats here. They voted to block a probe into the rape gangs. I mean, I'm talking block the probe, not block any statutes or anything like that. They
Right.
blocked even investigating it by a
We're
vote.
not going to look into it.
I mean,
No, nothing to see here. We're not going to look into it.
by a vote of 364 to 111. That is unbelievable. That
It is
tells you how
unbelievable.
far, and Britain's going to be history if they don't reverse this problem. I think I just saw the uh, uh, British natives are now outnumbered in their largest city, London. They better put a stop to this immigration fast, or that country's gone.
Yes, and you know what? The monarchy will be gone too,
Yeah,
because they will take them down. If they think they're going to survive this, they got another thing coming, because the monarchy will be taken down.
yeah, they'll be flying the Islamic flag with the half moon.
Right.
You
Right.
know, who said the Crusades were over?
It's sad to see, it in England. It's sad to see, but they've got other people. There's more people are rising up. They're waking up.
I
They
agree.
have to have their rising up, and they're waking up. Hey, I want to share this with you. I
I
got
love it.
This is my Yeti mug that I had made here by a local gal, and it's Donald Trump number 47. And it says, United States of America President, make America great again, 100% MAGA. Right under his name here, it says 100% MAGA. I love this. So this is my new mug. I wanted had to have a handle on it. Pretty cool, huh?
Well, I'll tell you, one of the great things, I know we're near the end here, but I have to say it. One of the greatest things that Trump has accomplished, I think, is this. He's showed Republicans how you need to behave. Don't behave like McCain. Don't behave like
Yes.
Bush. Don't behave like any of those guys. Behave like a grown up and tell children how to behave. If you do that, we'll be fine. And as far as the British are concerned, they're down, but not out. I think they can relate back to the time when Churchill was in office, and it was looking really grim for them. And look at the kind of leader they had in Churchill. Um, you need to go back to those principles. They had Margaret Thatcher, what, not 40 years ago. She was phenomenal. She brought them back from the brink.
Yes.
So I think they can do it, but they're going to have to go through the hard times just like we did. But it can be done.
It can be done, absolutely. Unless it gets too far gone.
Yeah, it's not.
And
I don't think it's too late, but
by
it's.
that vote, not
Mhm.
even willing to look into anything.
And
When they gave up the police even going into certain regions because of the stronghold there.
mhm,
That was conceding. You won. You
yeah,
won.
and the one thing that they don't have that we have is they don't have a Second Amendment.
No.
And I country without it, the radical left will run wild on you. You give up your guns, and
Yeah.
hey, that's how Hitler took out the Jews, made them give up their guns, and after that, it was on. Um,
And they didn't want to be called racist by going in there.
mhm,
That was the bottom line. You know
yeah,
what? You're not racist. You are defending your nation. And every nation has the right to a sovereign country and lawful immigration. And they got this big invasion. That part of what led to Brexit.
mhm,
The EU. You're not telling us we have to take all of this.
mhm.
You know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's why I think I think the British, because the citizens,
Yeah.
I think generally get it. It's their leadership class that
Yes.
they have to get rid of, and their leadership class is not afraid of them enough yet. And one of the things our founders recognized, I can't remember which one said it, but the best thing is the government ought to be afraid of the citizens, not the other way around. And we need to always remember that and always keep that.
Yeah.
Man, the
Uh,
founders are brilliant.
Well, because we do have the First Amendment enforced by the Second Amendment.
Wow.
Um, and Elon Musk buying X, that was the big game changer for us. You know, that people then are going, oh, yeah, I get to hear the truth. Look at the power of the people before the inauguration when Congress was about to pass that gigantic omnibus bill,
Mhm.
and the people spoke up. People spoke up on X and making phone calls, and rose up and said, "No, you're not." And that's what turned things around. I truly believe it. So it is our freedom of speech. It's speaking out and staying active. We have to keep our eyes on our government and be engaged.
And it's wired in our DNA. I have to tell a quick personal story because it's one of those, I think, one of those moments where I was profoundly proud to be an American. So I was at a really expensive hotel in DC. Across, it was UN Plaza, for those of you who are familiar with it. So UN Plaza Hotel is right across the street from the United Nations. And this is back in around, I don't know, 93, something like that. Something that's a long line to get to the front desk. And there were a number of people in Saudi Arabian garb. So clearly these were like the wealthy aristocrats of that country, and they walked right to the front of the line. And man, I'm sure they were used to just doing that in their own country, but here, boy, a whole bunch of New Jersey accents came out. Get to the back of the line, buddy. This is the United States of America, man. We don't do that. And they slunk to the back of the line. I don't care how much money you got. I don't care what class you're from. You get in line like everybody else. And that is the quintessential definition of an American, right? Everybody's the same. I love it.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That's a great note to end on, Don.
Yeah, we better end it too because you and I will go on for another hour.
We could easily, we could.
Easily. But it's
Hey,
always so great being here with this fantastic audience. Thank you guys for making my week every week. I'm sure, Sonny, you'd say the same thing.
yes, absolutely. So, everybody, hey, share the message. Thanks for being with us, watching us. I'll be back on Friday, and have a great night. Hope you stay warm.